Welcome back to the Georgia Show. We have got a lot going on here. We have all been jumping through hoops to get ready for this show, so I hope you enjoy it. A few housekeeping items. We will be at CPAC at the end of March. We're kind of relaunching our CDM Espanol channel, working with some national political figures to really gin that up and help Hispanic-speaking candidates into the midterms, which we're really excited about. I'll be heading to Beirut soon, Monday or tomorrow on the Skiff, which is my show, 10 to noon, Monday through Friday. I'm going to have Ed Dowd for a talk on the economy in China, which you don't want to miss. This is really fascinating. I've also got Dan O'Shea, Lieutenant Commander O'Shea, who was Naval Academy grad, former SEAL, and was in Iraq for years as the primary hostage negotiator. And we're going to talk about the Savannah Guthrie situation, and he's going to bring some real insight on that. I want to say hello to everybody in the chat. Thank you for joining us. Check out whatfinger.com. It's a great aggregator site if you're looking for something to check once a day after you check cdm.press and the Georgia Record, georgiarecord.com. Of course, sign up for our socials, CDM1 on Rumble, CDM on YouTube, and CDM_press on X, as well as mine is Real L. Todd Wood on X, and Bill is Insist on Truth. And then we've also got the Georgia Record on X. Last thing, our no ad subscriptions, my.cdm.press. That's my.cdm.press. You can get access to all of our content. Had a few Georgia people sign up yesterday, so thank you for that. Really appreciate the energy and the feedback we get on that whole capability, where you can go across all of our ads with no ads popping up. People actually love it. Bill, are you ready to talk about what we got today?
Ready to rock and roll.
What do we have on the show today?
All right, we're gonna cover some very interesting topics. I want to start with some things that the president said during the prayer breakfast this week, and a plan that he has for May 17th to rededicate the country. We'll talk about that. We're going to note some other things that delve into we'll call it the notion of faith and the need for faith as we go through some of these movements. We'll talk about some stuff going on here in Georgia. We continue to see challenges with our political establishment trying to divert attention, perhaps, from some of the things being done by Tulsi Gabbard and the DOJ.
Would those be the ones, Bill, that are all for paper ballots now? Would that be who you're talking about?
I haven't heard them come out for paper ballots yet, but they seem to be, there seems to be people trying to get on the bandwagon. Yeah. But I don't trust that quite yet. I don't know why. I know that others that are perhaps more expert than I feel good that we're moving in that direction. I hope that it is as portrayed, but I am a suspicious son of a gun most of the time. So, well, and we'll probably have a couple other things to talk about as well.
We want paper ballots. I mean, that's what we're getting to. We're just kind of laughing at the people getting on the last train. Anyway, what do we have first?
All right, let's talk about President Trump's appearance and speech at the National Prayer Breakfast that occurred this week. And we have tried to underscore the notion of faith, the need for faith, if you will, and the attacks in many cases against Christianity and the like, not just here, but around the world. And we've seen people and things pushing back, trying to and succeeding in reasserting the notion for the need for faith and the need for God in the American experience, for lack of a better term at the moment. Let's listen to Trump's comments first, and then we'll talk some more.
Himself once attended Sunday services held in the old House chamber on the very ground where I stand today. So there could be nothing more beautiful than for us to gather in this majestic place. It is majestic, and reaffirm that America is and will always be one nation under God. At every stage of the American story, our country has drawn hope and courage and inspiration from our trust in the Almighty. Deep in the soul of every patriot is the knowledge that God has a special plan and a glorious mission for America. And that plan is going to happen. It's going to happen. I hope it happens sooner rather than later. It's going to happen. And it's his hand that guides us every single step of the way. And all of you and the things we have to do is to see the defining role that faith and prayer have played in the life of our nation. And you just have to look at this building, and you can look at each other. You can really look at each other. It's defined almost everyone in this room. I think faith has been very strong with the people in this room.
So very interesting comments. And you'll recall that even as early as the day of inauguration, when he was standing in the rotunda, Trump made the point to introduce the notion of God being needed in the United States. And indeed, as we look back over some of the things we've seen, and we'll come back to the Olympics as the opening ceremonies occurred later on in the show, but going back to last year, we saw some just astounding things. The Olympic ceremonies appearing to mock the Last Supper of Christ with his apostles, and other symbolic pictures and so forth that are clearly not from a faith-based, at least not our faith-based background. So it is very notable that he had these comments to make, and then went a bit further and proposed, and I'm sure we'll execute a rededication of the country to God. We'll talk about this in a couple of minutes, but I wanted to remind folks that there was a covenant formed by, believe it or not, the Pilgrims before they landed that dedicated this land to God. And it makes one wonder, are some of these fights against America something to do with that? Is it something else that's trying to usurp that belief, usurp that faith? Well, Trump proposes to rededicate. Let's listen to this.
To support this exciting renewal this morning, I'm pleased to announce that on May 17th, 2026, that we're inviting Americans from all across the country to come together on our national mall to pray, to give thanks, and we are going to do something that everyone said, that's tough. We're going to rededicate America as one nation under God. A lot of people... Yeah, thank you very much. That's what I mean by the Spirit. It's so incredible to see it. I see it so much. I've never seen anything like it in 1 year. I thought it would take 2 years, 3 years, 4 years to be where we are. Well, we've done it in, really 10 months. We're at 12, but now it's just getting to a level that we've never reached before as a country. But that includes religion. And maybe that's part of the reason that we're doing so well. There's such great spirit. It's all spirit, and it includes religion. I've always said, you just can't have a great country if you don't have religion. You have to believe in something. You have to believe that what we're doing, there's a reason for it. There has to be a reason for it. We're all working and we're behaving. I behave because I'm afraid not to, okay? Because I don't want to get in trouble.
Good thought, Mr. President. None of us do. So I find that very interesting. And think back to the last few weeks. We saw Pete Hegseth standing in front of members of the military and leading them in the Lord's Prayer. And we see other things going on here. Believe it or not, in Tarrant County, which is the county surrounding Fort Worth, they have erected a set of the 10 Commandments. Now, keep in mind that in many states, satanic beliefs and others have forced that certain religious symbols to be taken down, to be removed from state capitals and so forth and other locations. And yet here we go, and we're seeing the Ten Commandments installed at the Tarrant County Courthouse. Let's take a look.
2, 3.
Fascinating. Now, keep in mind, too, that this is not, politics is not the only place we're seeing this. And Pete Hegseth in the War Department isn't the only place. The Grammy Awards were last week, and one of the most notable acceptance speeches was by a gentleman that goes by Jelly Roll, who earlier in life had some real challenges. I've understood that he was extremely heavy. He was a prisoner, a convict, and during his acceptance speech, gave honor and glory to Jesus for turning his life around. He said it 5 times. And it was very notable to me that most of the audience, who were other performers, didn't seem to have much of a reaction. But the people that were there to observe, who had bought tickets to be able to observe the Grammys, were up in the rafters or up in the balconies and so forth. They seemed to have an amazing response to that. So it isn't just politics. There's something changing, I believe, something that is moving the country to have a greater sense of faith, a greater sense of need of faith, and a greater movement toward God and Jesus. And we are very encouraged to see that, I believe.
Well, it's a fallacy that the separation of church and state is really a fallacy. I mean, that is not what it says in the Constitution, that you have to be completely separate. So, and also the Pilgrims thought this was the New Jerusalem. So that's interesting insight, Bill.
It is, and as you begin to look back and take into account the true history, I'll call it, of the United States, you find nuggets like that. On one of the shows, perhaps we'll do a review of the Pilgrim Monument in Plymouth. I've done some work with Sheila Holm on this, and it really is a remarkable monument dedicated to faith, real faith. And there is this very similar monument meant to almost copy it that has to do with the end of the Civil War, yet the approach is completely different. Longer than we can discuss in today's show, but fascinating. And I think we do need to cover it. Perhaps we'll do it in a special. Did you want to take a break at this point, Todd?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
1 second. We can do that. Stay with us. We'll be right back after a few words from our sponsors.
I'm David Cross, and you may know me from my election integrity work, but I also own U.S. Asset Management, a family-owned and operated investment advisory practice. I'm a certified portfolio manager, and my job is to help you make better decisions with your money. One of the things we try to avoid is investing in companies that push the woke agenda. If you're invested with one of the big firms out there, there's a pretty good chance that you're feeding the beast that hates your values. Our company is 100% conservative, and we'd love to have an opportunity to work with you. Check us out at us-am.com and look for our big, proud American Eagle logo.
A warm welcome here at the National Press Club. Welcome to the journalists, welcome to the Embra team, and welcome to the other guests that we have here. I'm going to announce, and as some of you guessed it right when they came in, the first E2 order by an American operator. And that operator is Avello. We believe this is really a strategic shift to unlock profitability for the customer. I'm very pleased that we have Andrew Levy here as the CEO of Avello, and I'm very pleased to give the stage to share a little bit more about what Avello is going to do with the E2 195. Thank you very much.
Couldn't be more excited to be here as part of this historic announcement. We have such a great cultural fit as companies, so we're very, very excited to be Embraer's newest customer. We launched our airline in April of 21, and our target is focusing on small secondary airports of large metro areas. We've carried over 8 million customers since we started on 63,000 flights. And we've done all these things with 1,200 of the greatest crew members I could ever imagine having, and many of them are here with me today. This is the right airplane for us. It's going to open up opportunities for us that no other aircraft can serve. The best thing about the airplane, of course, is you will not find a middle seat on this airplane. It doesn't exist. We won't have any to offer. It's going to be the best cabin in the United States, and we're so excited about that. This is going to elevate our experience to the highest level, and we think our customers are absolutely going to love the airplane.
I'm a naturopathic doctor. We are in the world of medicine very acquainted with many modalities, but probably the one most familiar with everybody would be two things: homeopathy and herbs, maybe some nutrients too, vitamins, minerals, that kind of thing. Now, we do know a lot about the drugs because we have to find out what drug you're taking affects you and what nutrient it depletes you of, because most every drug pharmacy product will deplete something. So we have been trained and we have a database that we can check into that says this is going to take your B12 away. The pharmaceutical company cannot patent organic substances made by the body. You're not born short of Advil. You're not born short of Ritalin.
Yeah.
You can be born short of insulin, right? Mm-hmm. The answers to staying healthy and keeping away from even SARS or any of those things getting into you is staying healthy.
Mm-hmm.
You and I get sick because our terrain gets out of balance. Well, that's the same thing in the soil. You and I are made from this thing called dirt. And when we get out of balance, we have the same thing happen. Weeds start to grow in our body. Right? And that's what we want in our body. We want nutrients that we don't understand how to get well enough yet because our suppliers are lacking knowledge on nutrient density foods.
So this is what drove you to develop this, was your knowledge of this, right?
Right. Mm-hmm. You know that.
Back to you, Bill.
Okay. I want to cover one more thing about Trump's actions this week, and then perhaps we'll pivot because I know you have a wonderful interview with Mr. Gululi to go through. Let me bring this up. So Trump made several moves pretty quickly and pretty quietly. It was either Thursday or Friday, I believe this happened. But one, he signed an executive order that essentially places for anybody that does business with Iran, which, of course, that would typically mean China, India, Turkey, and others, 25% tariffs just based on doing business with Iran. Pretty aggressive move. He also nominated a new Fed chairman, but then also basically said that you need to cut rates or face legal action. Most people laughed it off as a joke. Was it really a joke, or was it, a message? Well, we don't know yet, but clearly he wants to see the rates cut from the Federal Reserve perspective. The Pentagon cut every tie that I can recognize with Harvard. So military education, fellowships, elite programs, others, they appear to be gone. The reasons behind that, well, I think we'll learn many of them. We have seen concern around Harvard and some of the connections to money flow and other things. And so I suspect that this is in line with those. 4, Trump launched Trump RX. It's a program that includes 43 drugs. It does include Ozempic, even though Ozempic, for many people, or when many people are saying that there's concerns around it. But Big Pharma had been charging Americans $1,000, sometimes $1,500 a month for those types of drugs. GLP-1, I think, is what the underlying drug is. Trump slashed it down to about $300. And this goes back to his announcement in the Oval Room a month or so ago, where the head of the company that makes Ozempic seemed to pass out in the back of the room. So we hope he's well, but pretty aggressive things going on. And then within about 6 days from now, let's see, is that right? Yeah, about 5 days now. DHS funding is due to expire. So what happens when that runs out? Do we have a partial shutdown? Do we have more than that? Do we have less than that? Does it get solved? We don't know. But there are some very interesting things going on. Now, I will remind you that early in the administration, things like Panama and other moves seemed to cause a lot of people question. They said, what the heck is he doing with Panama? We don't own that anymore, blah, 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 blah. Then we find out, yes, in fact, we do. Based on treaty and I believe actually a deed, we do own part of it. And just recently, Panama, within their own Supreme Court, realized that, wait a minute, having the Chinese run this is unconstitutional. So we are back in charge. At the time, that seemed interesting, but why? Then all of a sudden, Venezuela happens, and we learn more about Venezuela, more about Cuba controlling, in some ways, Venezuela. We have yet to learn many of the details on that. And then the connection with Colombia, and you realize, wait a minute, Panama is a gateway between the Atlantic, the Caribbean, the Atlantic, and the Pacific. And what does that lead to? It leads a direct path to the west coast of the United States and the east coast of the United States. Was that always the plan? Well, it seems that it may have been. And yet, because we didn't see it all at the time, it looked like, what is going on? Now that we see a bigger picture, and we still don't have all of it, it now begins to make better sense. I would encourage folks to think of that and listen very carefully. We've advised this a number of times. Listen very carefully to Trump's statements. I believe in many cases he is giving us more data than many people realize. They take politicians speaking as rhetoric, like they're just talking. But I believe Trump is actually telling us things beyond what most people recognize in not every case, but in some cases. So with that, let's take a chance to move over and let's hear about your conversation with Mr. Gillooly, please.
Yeah, sure. I sat down with the CEO of the wellness company a few days ago, Peter Gillooly, and we talked about new cancer treatments, which I found fascinating. I think you'll enjoy this interview. Can you hear me? I feel we might be frozen.
Yeah, I can hear you. I mean, you're a little choppy. I don't know if it's the downtown setting where you are.
Yeah. Okay, we're good. All right, here we go. So we are honored to be back with Peter Gillooly. He's the CEO of the wellness company, and so much going on there, Peter. I have to give it to you, man. It's the product flow is pretty amazing. But this month is Cancer Awareness Month, and everybody in the U.S. has been touched by someone who has cancer, knows someone. My own brother died of brain cancer decades ago. Do you think we should be doing more research? I mean, where do you see this whole thing from your perspective as re-engineering healthcare?
It's a great question, Todd. The first thing that people should just be mindful of about cancer is that the field of treatment has not evolved significantly in several decades. First course of action is still for many chemotherapy and then radiation and surgery. And I'm not saying that these treatments aren't effective for some, they are, but for a disease state that affects 1 in 3 Americans over the course of their lifetime, and as you said, we all know somebody, if not ourselves, who have been affected by cancer. It's very surprising that we make all these proclamations year after year, and we have cancer awareness months, we have NFL players wearing the pink ribbons,
Yes.
Yet the treatment of cancer has not really evolved significantly. And we've seen a lot kind of emerge kind of in the medical freedom space that has, I think, made a lot of the experts start to question the orthodoxy when it comes to cancer. Repurposing old drugs, for instance, you see it all over Twitter now. There's many studies that are starting to emerge that, things like ivermectin and mebendazole combinations for cancer treatments. Methylene blue, which we all saw, Mel Gibson talk about with Joe Rogan last year, which got a tremendous amount of publicity online. So there's a lot of these old drugs that are, quite frankly, cost effective and safe that maybe help. And maybe they're not the first course of treatment, but certainly as an adjunct option, they could really help, I think, many people.
So you brought up a good point in that a lot of these repurposed drugs are not being used. one theory is that Big Pharma wants these new expensive drugs that they, obviously spend a lot of R&D money to develop, and then they have to get a return on investment. So they're not interested in the 50-cent, ivermectin pill that may help. What say you?
Absolutely. Follow the money. And I think we all can look at the American healthcare system now and agree that it's a disease management system. There are little incentives for disease cures because then you lose a patient effectively. And we see the same thing when it comes to cancer. And moreover, and your audience might know this, Todd, but there's only two types of drugs in the United States that doctors are actually incentivized monetarily to prescribe to patients. And those two types are vaccines, surprise, and chemotherapy drugs. And we all know chemotherapy, a single course, you're going to look at, $30,000 a month on those drugs. So we're not talking about small sums of money. So you're absolutely right when you say that perhaps there is a misaligned incentive here within Big Pharma and the insurance industry, and maybe the healthcare industry as a whole, for that matter, all the way to the FDA, that we're not looking at maybe the best options for patients, and we're looking at the best options for business.
So the turbo cancer has been a thing, and there's been some studies come out recently, and the whole theory is this spike protein that's being created in your body may do real damage to your body, including suppressing your immune system and allowing a lot of these cancers to grow. Has the wellness company looked into that? I know Dr. McCullough's been involved in that, correct?
We absolutely have, and we have an ivermectin mebendazole product, and we actually have an ongoing study right now about patients who have been using our ivermectin mebendazole product with the course of their own cancer treatment. We hope to be able to publish results from those studies here in the second quarter, but the initial results are some very interesting and promising stories that we're receiving back from patients. But to your point on turbo cancer and the spike protein, look, we all have cancer cells in our body every day. You, me, everybody listening. Our immune system is built to clean these up. It can proactively detect cancer cells and eliminate them. And that's how we stay healthy. But when you have a compromised immune system, that's when cancer can get out of control, because your immune system, quite frankly, can't recognize or keep up with the growth of cancer cells. And that's exactly the theory right now about why turbo cancer is emerging within vaccinated individuals and individuals with long COVID, because the spike protein compromises and overwhelms the immune system and causes an inability to recognize early cancers. And look, it makes sense. Even 5 years ago, Todd, I couldn't tell you a single person under 40 who had a aggressive pancreatic cancer, colon cancer. Yet the last couple of years, the numbers of people who have gone, to stage 4 cancers that are, very young has exploded. It's really unheard of in medicine, and we really need to be asking why. And I think the answer is the results of the vaccine and the spike protein that maintains itself in people's bodies.
That being said, do you see any other institutions besides yourself and maybe, Children's Self-Defense or others looking at this issue with ivermectin and some of the other drugs to actually test them and see if they're effective? Do you think more research needs to happen, I guess is the question.
100% more research needs to happen. And to be clear, the study that we're running is not a FDA-approved randomized controlled trial. This is a study that we're running on our own patients just to get some more data about the outcomes and hopefully spark that conversation. What we really need is a big research institution, ideally one that's independent and not being funded by large pharmaceutical companies, to take this topic seriously. And that's really what it's going to take to put this on the map. There have been some studies that have come out in the past 5 years that show good promise, but we're still talking about small patient populations and not the same rigor that you would expect from an FDA-approved trial. But look, this is the scientific process, and we really think that throwing our weight behind it and our voice behind it as something that seriously needs to be investigated by the healthcare authorities is going to be a step in the right direction.
What about prevention? We always talk about cures and detection, and but it seems like an ounce of prevention would go a long way. Do you see any, developments, or do you have theories on that, on where we could look to help that effort?
Yeah, certainly. So I talked a few moments ago about how the immune system plays an extremely important role in cancer prevention. Also, by the way, metabolism. Your body and how you eat can affect its ability to modify cell growth, right? Cancer really is an out of control cell growth. So we've been looking at this topic seriously. Dr. Kelly Victory, who I know you've had on the show before, she had her own cancer battle. She had breast cancer. She, attacked it aggressively and has had a very good outcome. But through that process, she really went down the rabbit hole about all the different options that are out there when it comes to cancer treatments. And she recognized that, besides the lifestyle factors that we all know about, don't smoke, drink less, get sleep, which, by the way, really affect inflammation and stress on the body, which in turn affects the immune system. She pointed out that there are a number of ways that, from a supplementation standpoint, we can reinforce our immune system and our metabolism to function and reset at more optimal levels. We designed a product called Shield, which is specifically geared towards optimizing your body for inflammation, immune system defense, and metabolism simultaneously. We discovered that in order to do so, you need a actually very bulky product. It's not something that you're going to be able to fit in a single tablet. So we actually invented a drink mix. It tastes just like hot cocoa, but it's packed with all the different nutrients that you need to help really reinforce your body. And look, it needs to be a lifestyle, right? Like, as you said, lifestyle is really one of the largest outcomes when it comes to determining whether or not you get cancer. And we try to design it so it's something that you could take every day and enjoy, and also get the benefits of better health.
Outstanding. I'll have to look into that. I want to switch gears. Bobby Kennedy's been doing a lot. He's getting a lot of pushback in the MAHA movement. What do you see happening as we go forward? Do you think the government will be successful in removing a lot of this pharma influence?
It's hard to say, especially because administrations are fickle. They come and go. I'm encouraged by some of the gestures that Bobby Kennedy and HHS has made, specifically around nutrition. Look, Americans have some of the worst nutrition out of any developed country around the world. That's why we're so obese and have all these other nutrition-related diseases. The food pyramid, I think, was a good step. We don't agree with all the recommendations on the food pyramid. I still don't think eating red meat, for instance, every single day is necessarily the right answer, but perhaps it's a step in the right direction away from processed carbs. But really, if HHS wants to chase that lead to the ground, what they should be doing is looking at how some other countries have restricted some of these ingredients and farming methods that have led to bad outcomes, say celiac disease. Gluten allergies weren't a thing in America 20 years ago. And I would argue that there's no such thing as a gluten allergy. I would argue that it's a glyphosate allergy because 15 years ago, we legalized spraying our crops with glyphosates. And no matter how you wash them, you're always going to have some in the food. That's not the case in some of these other European countries. That's why you see people that have a gluten allergy that go to Italy, have a bowl of pasta and say, I feel great. Well, it wasn't the gluten, because there was gluten in that pasta. So we really need to be asking ourselves why. So I think there's things like that I think I would love to see some more concerted action around, Todd, in order to have a better food system, which really can benefit all Americans.
Last question. You mentioned obesity, and there's been a lot of negative consequences in press on some of the, like the Ozempic face and a lot of these other drugs or methods, I should say. You have a very specific, interesting product called Drop, I think. Tell us about that.
Yeah, we have multiple products that are geared to help treat obesity and metabolism. We even launched a new sublingual tirzepatide in order to not have to inject yourself every week versus having a much more lower dosed, comfortable way of getting GLP-1's products. And to be clear, it's a drug, right? This is a prescription product, and there's risks that come with every prescription. Personally, our stance is that the benefits for most of GLP-1s outweigh the risk. That said, A lot of it depends on the individual taking the drug. And by that, I mean, there's no such thing as a silver bullet or a panacea. If you're just taking it and expecting to get skinny and not changing anything else about your lifestyle, Todd, you're not going to have long-lasting change, which is what Americans want. So when you hear things like, Ozempic face and some of these side effects, a big cause of that is the fact that people are losing weight, but effectively they're starving themselves. They're not doing anything in terms of exercise or building muscle. So you're seeing the effects of starvation more so than anything else. And then when they get off of GLP-1 products, because they didn't change their lifestyle, they have no way to protect themselves from the fat coming back. So they end up right back on the GLP-1s a couple months later, and that starts a bad cycle that we don't like to see. So while I think that GLP-1s offer a tremendous benefit and they can help a lot of Americans, we just need to be conscious that the drug alone is not going to give you the result you want. You need to still put in some of the work to actually change your lifestyle and commit yourself to being healthy.
Well, Peter, I appreciate you coming on. Do you have anything else you want to get out today?
I thank you for the time, Todd, and all the work you do. I'm really excited to continue to be pushing on this cancer topic. We just see so many people now tragically, contracting cancer. And I think from everything that we've done on spike protein and now adjunct drugs for cancer, I think we have a very big offering that can save a lot of lives, frankly, and that's the goal.
Actually, I have one more question. Sorry.
Sure.
How would someone who doesn't, they have a healthcare system with their company and maybe they are not satisfied and they want to explore how to use, I don't want to say alternative healthcare, but maybe re-engineered healthcare. How would they interact with the wellness company? What would they do?
We have a ton of educational resources, Todd, on our website. We've created 10 plus page downloadable guides on key topics that we get asked about most: cancer, weight loss, spike protein, that really act as an authority piece so you can learn in layman's terms what's going on here and also explore some of the, to your point, alternative options out there outside the mainstream. And while we are a cash pay company, I think if people actually really start to look at their own healthcare spend, they'd be shocked to see how much money they're spending every single month straight out of their paycheck, or, God forbid, they have one ER visit that runs, a couple grand. You can save a lot of money by just taking some preventative action, having a medical emergency kit in your home, starting a healthy supplementation program. It costs you very little and can save you a lot in the long run.
Peter, thank you very much. We'll have you back.
Thanks, Todd.
All right, bye. I enjoyed that with Peter. He's always an interesting interview.
Well, that is a pretty valuable and I think highly important interview. There are studies that are advancing the findings that suggest that some of these compounds, some very easy to find, some natural compounds, can be very effective at slowing, sometimes stopping certain types of cancers, sometimes broad types of cancers. I would, in addition to what Peter mentioned in terms of going to the wellness company, he had mentioned Dr. McCullough's efforts, and I would highly recommend that folks on X and others review the work of Nick Hulsher and the McCullough Institute. I recall that just these past couple of weeks, I've seen some reports that go down this exact pathway with regard to a number of easy supplements, easy compounds, some things as simple as dandelion extract that are found and shown to be efficacious against cancer growth. So highly recommend people do their homework. You never can tell when it's going to help you or help one of your family members.
Totally agree. Okay, what's next, Bill?
All right, let's go here. I want to talk about Trump accounts. And the reason is you're going to hear, I think, more about this today. My understanding is Scott Bessent has announced that there will be an ad during the Super Bowl regarding Trump accounts. And this can be rather fascinating. This was announced, if you recall, with Michael Dell and his wife a month and a half ago, perhaps. And it is a way of setting money aside, some of which is going to come from the government, but setting money aside for newborns and young people to be able to have something that they can rely on as they get further along in their growth. And so let's take a look at what this is the latest that we're seeing on this. So this is, by the way, we're gonna do a disclaimer like David Cross does. We're not providing financial advice. You should go to your tax and financial experts for that. But based on what we know as in our learning as laymen, here's a description of the program. Newborns can get $1,000 that compounds until they're at age 18, at which time only the child can access it. So it's not some sort of weird savings account that the parents can get. If they're not newborn, kids 1 through 9 can get $250 in seed money from the Treasury Department, and the rest is the same. Now, you can continue to contribute to these over time, or the parents can, or others can. Kids 10 to 18 can still register, but they don't get any seed money. But everything else, again, remains the same. They can continue to contribute to this account, and they get access to it at age 18. As I said, all the accounts, all the different levels of accounts can be contributed to. In order to register, that's the form that you use. We are told 4547. And the specifics about filling it out, we will leave to you and your financial or tax expert. And we do see that it seems to be remarkable. Most people today enjoy some of their wealth associated with one or more IRAs or 401k programs that they've participated in. This is essentially similar to that in many ways, but it allows that wealth growth to begin at birth, essentially. And the child, when they then become 18 and might need it for college or starting a business or something else, that money will have been compounding for up to 18 years, and as they are waiting for them to take actual use with. Fascinating. So watch for an ad on during the Super Bowl today, and hopefully you can learn more about what this is and how it can affect you, your kids, or others that you know. Let me play this in terms of the announcement of the program so that we can understand a little bit more about how important this might be.
Done peace deals, trade deals, and tax deals. The peace deals will obviously be enduring for decades to come, but I think there's a chance that these Trump accounts may be his greatest legacy, because I think that the children who are born last year, over the next couple of years, in 18 years, those will start rolling off, or it may be that the individuals who get these accounts, and everyone can create one for their family, for children up to age 18, these 4 years will be funded with the $1,000 seed from the government. But as these accounts mature, when you're 18, they can be rolled into a retirement account. So the full effect of these may not be felt on our national psyche for 20, 30, 40, even 60 years. But I am convinced that this will be a real-time experiment in financial literacy and financial education, which we here at Treasury support every day.
Okay. All right. So let's pivot, and we're going to talk about Georgia now. And we have spoken in the last couple of weeks, especially since the FBI raid on Fulton County. We've talked about the way that folks seem to, both now and over the course of the last 5 years, certainly, seem to be hiding things. They are keeping data and records from the public. And Georgia has what are called sunshine laws, which should make most records available to the public upon request. And so it's very interesting to see a case emerging that I'm going to talk about here that will be in hearings tomorrow at 10 a.m. in the courtroom 5A in the Superior Court of Fulton County. And essentially this revolves around without going into all the detail, it revolves around apparent attempts to evade, maybe is another word that could be used, certain requests for information, open records requests that really should be very easily delivered to the public. And I'm going to put this in perspective in just a moment. But Brant Meadows has this case coming up. It is open to the public, and I would encourage folks that are able to and wish to attend to do so. This would be a fascinating attempt or a fascinating time to put pressure on this notion of you don't get to keep information from Georgians and the Georgia public just because it's inconvenient or you don't want us to know what's going on. You can't do that. The law says you have to turn it over. Now, I have, in the last couple of weeks, experienced some of my own doings with regard to open records, and I'll explain it this way. Most people in the last month have seen the testimony and then the disclosures come from records associated with investigations by the state election board. Well, if you think about it, when someone puts in a complaint, a concern, they send that in. It goes in, I believe, to the Secretary of State or someone between the state election board and the Secretary of State. It typically has been within the Secretary of State's office to review and then determine what to do with it next, to escalate it to a case or to do something else with it. Is that the right way to do it? Question now emerges. But in any case, complaint goes in and should be in a complaint log. There are hundreds of these, maybe more than hundreds. And you can see that based on each time the state election board meets, they have a list of perhaps dozens of cases that they are asked to then review and determine whether action needs to be taken, and if so, what kind of action they will recommend. So you'll have a list of complaints that come in, and then those will be turned over to, some of those will be turned over to the state election board for further action and further consideration as cases. So you would think that someone in the Secretary of State's office would have access to, one, the complaint log of complaints which have come in, and would indeed have that log going back as far as complaints have been made, which certainly would go back to all the way to 2020, maybe beyond. In addition, they should be, someone there is producing a list of cases for the state election board to consider during each of their meetings. I put in an open records request for each of those, for the complaint log and for the case log. And the response that I got indicated that they said the Secretary of State's office is not the custodian for either of those records or any of those records, and that I would need to follow up with the state election board open records person. In doing that, I've now learned that indeed there's a partial, it appears, complaint log that resides within the state election board. But guess what's missing? There's no case log there. So those cases are coming from somewhere. And after asking yet again the Secretary of State's office for that case log, I was told those records are not, they do not have responsive records in the format I requested. And so I asked, well, what format can you give them to me in?
What was their answer?
I don't believe I have an answer to the last question I posed. But this case is in some ways similar. There is an effort. We saw it with Fulton County. We saw it with previous players within the state election board, I'll call them the not good players, just to be plain. And there is an effort to keep certain data from the Georgia public. And this is one of the areas where they do it. They in some ways change law so that there's very fine distinctions between what can be requested and what can't be. And you'll recall too that when we started asking for things like files associated with the 2020 election from various counties, often in many cases those counties would say, oh, we have no responsive records. Well, they were relying on the fact that in order to give the records back, you actually have to run a report out of your system. It takes about 10 minutes. And yet they would deny that they even had access to it, even though they did. So this is going to be an area that you will see grow in importance, perhaps in light of the investigations going on through the DOJ, perhaps in light of the actions of Brant Meadows and others. So we encourage folks to push on these. And if you get a response like we have no responsive records, I think you should consider asking a slightly more intricate question. There are a number of folks that can advise you on doing that. Doge Georgia and others have great ideas. And in fact, if you look at Doge Georgia and Scott Howard's writings, I believe that he's posted some Substacks which have wonderful ideas about how to pursue an open records request vigorously. So highly recommend folks take a look at that.
Well, we have that across the country. Like in Florida, we have this phenomenon, if you will. For instance, in Florida, when we found out the machines were creating up to 20% blank ballots in some jurisdictions, we brought that to light. Chris Gleason and his crew through us. And guess what the legislature did in Florida? They passed a law saying you can't have access to that data anymore and called it the Election Integrity Act. So, it's quite diabolical the way they work the rules in their favor. So to not release information shows the criminal activity.
To call it a shell game is simplifying it to the nth degree. It's a complex game because they take great pains to try to come up with ways to keep you from getting the data. So, all right, we're going to pivot back for a minute. We got more with Trump, believe it or not. Let's take a look at this. So just this morning, Trump posted this: America's elections are rigged, stolen, and a laughingstock all over the world. We are either going to fix them or we won't have a country any longer. I am asking all Republicans to fight for the following. 1, the Save America Act. Within that, all voters must show voter ID identification. All voters must show proof of United States citizenship to register for voting, and no mail-in ballots except for illness or disability or military or travel. Trump has also posted some very interesting things over the last few days. Now, again, I encourage folks to really look very carefully at what Trump posts and talks about. I think he's sending messages we need to recognize. Here's one. Aired on CNN, favorability by Democrats and Republicans for photo ID use in order to vote. Look at the numbers. 71% of Democrats favor using photo ID in order to vote. 71%. So where are these people that are saying, oh, no, we don't need this. We don't want this. This makes no sense. Well, Ossoff himself, our illustrious senator from the Democratic side, just held a rally. He required photo ID in order to enter his rally, but he's lobbying for no photo ID for voting. What sense does that make? He used a photo ID for his own rally. Come on. Sorry, small rant.
Yeah.
And of course, with Republicans, the number was 95%. Let's look at various other groups. White, 85%. Latino, 82%. Black, 76%. The communities want this. They want the same things we do. We've talked about this many times in the past. One of the ways that the folks driving Mockingbird Media and others tries to keep us fighting against ourselves is to make us feel like we're fighting against another community and against another group. When in fact, what we do when you talk to people, person to person, you often find out we don't want anything much different. We want many of the same things in many of the same ways. We just have to be open to talking about it and getting these intermediaries out of the way. So, and very much encourage this as a theme as we go forward. Be willing to have a dialogue with folks. And I bet you'll find out that folks don't want things that are much different than what you do in a lot of cases. How many? You won't know until you have the conversation. So have the conversation. Let's see. Bear with me for a second. Let's see where we're going next. There's been a number of posts from Trump in the last few days that, again, why is he doing this? Well, I think it's reinforcing what we think we already know, but giving us data on which to rest that belief or that set of beliefs. So let's look at this video that he posted one of the nights during this week. Bear with me for a second. Let's bring this up. Oh, bringing it up from the wrong place. Sorry. There we go.
But the U.S. election, as you point out, you're not an American citizen. You're an Australian. You know, you're clearly not rooting for Hillary. But are you rooting for Trump?
No. I mean, if we have good information on Trump, we publish that. If we have good information on Hillary, the Democrats, we publish that. It is a bit concerning, the allegations that by the Clinton campaign that everyone is a Russian agent are really disturbing. Why is that? Well, because bizarrely, Hillary Clinton, the Democrat, has positioned herself now to be the security candidate. She's powered up with the neocons responsible for the Iraq War, and she's grabbed on to this kind of neo-McCarthyist hysteria about Russia and is using that to demonize the Trump campaign. The Trump campaign has all sorts of things wrong with it, but as far as we can see, being Russian agents is not one of them. You know, some people have asked us, when will you release information on Donald Trump? And of course, we're very interested in all countries to reveal the truth about different candidates so people can understand. But it's really hard for us to release anything worse than what comes out of Donald Trump's mouth every second day.
So, you know, very few people are going to call Julian Assange a fibber. And there he is. She's saying, "Are you supporting either of these people?" And the answer is no. We're here to bring out truth. Sounds familiar to me. And he says, you know, why aren't you bringing out stuff on Trump? Well, they don't have any. So it's very interesting to see that dialogue come out. There was also this. We'll play this one briefly. We may not play the whole thing on these, but they are kind of notable.
Investigation team obtained forensic access to a DS200 tabulator, the machine that counts the votes. A Telit 4G wireless chip manufactured in Taiwan was discovered embedded into the motherboard. The voting machine tapes clearly indicate modem engagement and transmission of election data.
So Trump is bringing this out. Now, I will say that I was in a room in Forsyth County where Brian Kemp was asked, well, why are we still having these machines when they can communicate over the internet? And he denied it to the room. No, they don't. That's false. And everything we've seen since disputes that. And what you just saw there disputes it. Then there was, you know.
Let me just say that anyone who is not calling for the immediate removal of the machines should be suspect. Everybody's out. Oh, we can fix the voter rolls, you know, vote by mail. Those are critical issues, but none of that makes a damn difference if the machines are not removed. So all you have to do to see if someone is real is ask them, are you pushing for removal of the machines immediately? And see what they say.
Yes. And you'll see that. We just saw that in Trump's post, and you'll see that consistently from the administration. The machines need to go. Every aspect of the machines, whether it's the poll pads, the ballot marking devices where you touch your selections, or the scanner, all create gateways, if you will, into the system, any one of which can be used to potentially do nefarious acts. So those need to be gone. Need to go to hand ballots, hand marking, single day voting, voter ID, citizenship check, all the stuff we've talked about over and over and over again. And there is no halfway to do this right. All right, let's play this one last video, and then we'll talk about the Olympic opening. So let's do this.
People should not be afraid of their governments. Governments should be afraid of their people.
The American populace is facing an unconventional warfare scenario. This is information warfare.
So, an interesting, provocative video, to say the least. But what's the message? Well, the message appears to be we are in a conflict, whether we see it or not. There is a conflict going on, and we're going to have to deal with it. Okay, so last year, during the Olympic opening ceremony. I think it was a year ago, was it? Maybe more than that. We noted some of the mocking of Christianity, mocking of faith itself, and called it out. Well, folks are doing much the same thing today after the opening ceremony of the Olympics. Now, it may not be as recognizable, but there are some very interesting things here. And just the tone, you can almost feel in the tone of what was shown something odd, something off a bit. So let's play this and we'll take a look. Oh, hang on. Let me pull this out. Sorry. Get a new producer.
It's a functioning machine, this cauldron, and it's going to perform, if you will, for visitors throughout the games.
Two cauldrons lighting up the sky.
Did you hear what he called it? He called it a cauldron. Don't we call the Olympic flames a torch? So one of the locations, they actually lit two of these, or two not identical but similar things in a couple cities. It just felt odd. It did not feel like, gosh, hey, we're at the Winter Olympics, snow bunnies and polished skis.
It looks like Eyes Wide Shut is what it looks like.
It does. Now, what's very interesting, and this picture is a little difficult to see it, but the shape in that circle forms an upside down star. Upside down star. Some people call those pentagrams.
Mm-hmm.
So, what does it mean? Oh gosh, maybe it means something to the people that believe in this stuff. Doesn't mean that much to us. But we will point it out because we want to make the other guys feel uncomfortable. Todd, that's it for today, I think, and we will have plenty next time.
That was a lot. Great information. Okay, we'll be back on the Skiff tomorrow, 10 to noon. Monday through Friday, we've got Ed Dow. Don't miss it tomorrow, and Dan O'Shea on the hostage situation with Savannah Guthrie. So we'll see you on the Skiff tomorrow, and thank you for joining us. We'll be back Wednesday night at 7.
We'll see you next time.